our stories. I'm your host, Zoe Joe, with my co-host.
Lily?
And with that, let's get started. Today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Kestner.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Christy Kestner. I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm also a neuroscience consultant for several digital health apps. And what I also do is I run my own platform called Brain and Beyond, where I break down neuroscience, immunology, and just health topics to make it accessible, fun, but engaging and accurate for the public.
That's great. Oh, we're very excited to have you on the podcast. This is really exciting for us. It's a big milestone for us too. Every episode we have a segment, How was your week? So if you prepared anything for that, would you like to get us started?
Sure. So, actually, this is my second podcast that I'm on today, which is really fun. I was going to say, I just love what you guys are doing, just bringing more awareness out there. I mean, you guys are so smart just to utilize social media and just get your voices heard and of just educating the public and other students. I mean, I didn't realize like I've been on a few student-run podcasts, and I just think that's such a brilliant idea just to make it fun
Thank
and
you.
approachable for people. So this is awesome. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lily,
Um,
would you like to go next?
um, my week was great. Today I had track, which was really fun, and many tests, so it's been a very stressful week, but it's been fun, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Yeah. My week was okay. I had a psych test this morning, bright and early, but I think it was okay, which is very fitting. And I think next week is when my test starts to come in. But this week we can chill, and then next week is when I have to crunch down. But okay, if we want to get started with the questions, we can do that.
Yeah.
If you want to start us off.
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
sure. So I was wondering, especially for our listeners who might not much know about science, how would you explain what neuroscience actually is?
Yeah, so neuroscience is really just the study of how your brain and your nervous system works. So this can be everything from how you think, you feel, you learn, to making decisions, and even just how you experience stress or emotions. So all this really ties into the brain. And what really makes it interesting to me is how we're trying to understand these billions of neurons and the connections that are there that actually create your thoughts and your behaviors and experiences. So I always kind of like to think of it as if neuroscience is kind of figuring out how your brain is running your entire life. So this is kind of like the behind the scenes.
Is that what got you interested in studying neuroscience? Or is there like a moment where you thought, oh, this is what I want to pursue?
Yeah, so for me, it was actually really personal. My grandmom had Parkinson's disease when I was a kid, and I just remember, just seeing how something happening in the brain just could really change how someone moves and thinks and lives day to day. And so that really stuck with me. And once I started learning more about this, I just kept asking why, just about everything, and I never really stopped. So my path was pretty traditional at first. I was a biology major in college, and then I did a master's degree in cell and molecular biology, and then my PhD was ultimately in neuroimmunology. And so then after that, I did a postdoc in pancreatic cancer focus therapeutic development. So basically, I was in research and academia for a little over 10 years. And at some point, I just realized, I really do love the science, but I think I enjoy communicating it even more. And so I think that's really how I just pivoted into science writing and then starting my platform, Brain and Beyond, which will be a year ago tomorrow. And so this really ended up opening just a lot of unexpected opportunities. And like I said, I do a lot of neuroscience consulting for digital health platforms. I collaborate with other scientists and physicians, and do things like podcasts like this. So it's really been a shift from being like fully behind the scenes and research to what I'm doing now, which is a lot more public facing and definitely focus more on the educational side, which I honestly think is a lot more fun.
What's kind of like a day to day as a neuroscientist?
Yeah, so it's actually not that glamorous at all. So my background is in research. So basically, I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm reading papers, I'm writing, analyzing data, just that kind of thing. But now my day to day does look pretty different than what I did in academia. So some days, they'll be more admin heavy. Some days I'm creating content, and then other days I'm in meetings with clients working on consulting projects. So this can look like, editing articles, doing live Q&A sessions, putting together educational talks or video content, or even working on other collaborations with other scientists or physicians. So it's less of like being in the lab all day and more kind of how do I take something really complex and then explain it in a way that clicks and makes sense. And the hardest part is just making sure that it's accurate and not simplified for people because that's where a lot of misinformation happens.
Mhm. That's so interesting. Well, since it's a podcast for students, I wanted to ask a bit about like teenagers and how they manage stress. Why do you think stress and emotions feel so intense and so like concentrated, especially in your teenage years? And what is actually happening in the brain during that time?
Yeah, I feel like this is something that's not talked about enough. Basically, during this part of your life, your brain is still developing. And what's interesting is not all parts are developing at the same time. So, your emotional and reward centers of the brain, like the amygdala and the ventral striatum, these are very active during adolescence. But then your prefrontal cortex, so this is the part that's responsible for decision making or impulse control and regulating your emotions. And so this is still maturing and really doesn't stop fully developing until your mid 20s. So you kind of, in a way, end up with this imbalance where your emotions are really strong. And the system that helps regulate these emotions is still catching up. So that's why things can, feel more intense, they feel more reactive and kind of like harder to control in the moment. And so I think a good way to think of it is it's like having a really strong like gas pedal in your car, without having fully developed brakes yet. So, it's not a bad thing. It's just a normal part of brain development.
Is there anything neuroscience suggests students can do to manage stress in healthier ways?
Yeah, so stress is pretty broad. So what I usually like to separate it from chronic stress to short-term stress. So short stress can actually help you focus. But it's when stress is constant and becomes chronic, that's really when it starts to affect the brain. And so one of the main systems that's involved in this is the HPA axis. And so this controls your stress hormones like cortisol. And so what's interesting is when that system is activated over and over again, it can really start to dysregulate how your brain responds to stress. And so then over time, this chronic stress can really impact other brain regions like the hippocampus. And so this is really important for memory, as well as your amygdala, which is processes emotion. And so basically, what you can think of is once you're under chronic stress, basically, you're having a harder time concentrating, you're having more of an emotional reactivity to things, and you're going to feel overwhelmed more easily. And in some cases, this can be a risk for things like anxiety or depression. So sometimes it's not really just feeling stressed, it's really changing how your brain is functioning over time. But the cool thing is, and the good news is that your brain is adaptable. So things like, getting a good night's sleep, taking breaks and supportive environments, this can actually help buffer these effects.
So I saw you do Mythbuster Mondays. and we had a few like fun things to ask you about. We thought was interesting. We already researched this, but we heard that one myth is that people are left-brained or right-brained. What does the
Yeah.
science say about that?
Yeah, this is like really common, and I feel like this is a myth, just won't die. So certain functions can be a little more dominant in one hemisphere, but the key thing is like your brain is highly interconnected, and so most tasks use both sides working together. So it's not this your left brain or right brain myth. Just keep in mind that you're using your entire brain and it works as a network.
Mhm.
Right. Another mythbuster we found was like learning styles, like
Yep.
auditory, visual learning. Is there real science behind that?
Yeah, that's like another one that's really common. So what's interesting about this is I feel like people definitely have more of their individual preferences, but like there's no strong evidence that actually teaching a specific learning style actually improves learning. So your brain really learns best just when information is reinforced in multiple ways and not just one. And so that what really matters is like how actively that you're engaging your brain with the material.
So how do you recommend students to study then without thinking about learning styles or anything like that?
Find out what works best for you. I mean, it's personal preference, right? So like for me, I felt like especially during my PhD in college, like the best way for me to be efficient in studying, writing things down. And I know it's like more difficult for you guys because y'all don't get actual like paper textbooks like I did. Like everything's, like on your laptop or an iPad, but just, I feel like to have better recall, just write things down.
Yeah.
Another mythbuster we had was also people often say humans only use 10% of their brains,
Yeah,
which
I honestly don't know where this came from, and I feel like this has been around forever. I think it really just came from a misunderstanding just from brain research and it just got exaggerated over time. But again, this one's not true. So we use all of our brain and it, just not all at once. And so what's interesting is that brain imaging actually shows different regions are constantly active depending what you're doing and depending like on what you're thinking and even when you're resting. Don't really think about it as like unlocking this unused potential. It's more how efficiently your brain's networks are all cohesively working together. And then like, I don't know, another way I always kind of think about this is like if we actually were only using 10% of our brains, then brain injuries wouldn't matter as much.
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
That's a good
What
way.
about when like you're sleeping? Are you still like using all of your brain or really?
Memory
Wow.
consolidation. That's why sleep is so important. And like, I'm going to touch on this in some of the questions you guys ask. Like, there's just so much research out there about, especially when it comes to like Alzheimer's and dementia. Just fun fact, your brain has kind of like a cleanup crew called the glymphatic system. And so when you're sleeping, it cleans up a lot of toxic proteins like amyloid that you've probably heard with like Alzheimer's or alpha synuclein that's with Parkinson's. So that's the whole, idea is like you getting enough sleep, your brain can clean all this up, which lowers your dementia risk, which is
I
really
think
interesting.
I think recently it got harder to sleep early because everyone has so many things to do and stuff. Sports, school, like work sometimes.
Try like that's like the best thing you can do for your body. And I feel like so many people always try to think of like wellness hacks, but like I know it's boring, but like sleep is like one of the best things you can do for your brain and your body.
So another thing that's really like common around us is that like students love to multitask. We like to have our phones next to us, listen to music while we're doing homework and things. Do you think it's okay to do that, or do you think it's like not recommended?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I feel like what people call is like multitasking. That's actually your brain just rapidly switching between these tasks. So it's not really doing them at the same time. And every single time you kind of switch between them, there is this mental cost. So your focus drops. You can make more mistakes. You don't really learn as deeply. So, texting, scrolling, and studying at the same time, it might feel productive, but honestly, your brain's just context switching over and over again.
Mhm.
Something I've noticed with like kids today is like during movies or like watching YouTube videos, they'll be using like playing Subway Surfers or like a game on their phone as they watch movies and stuff. Is there science behind that or
I think that's the downside of social media and the internet now. It's just everything's so readily at your fingers, which in one way it's amazing because there's so much information out there. But at the same time, I feel like it just creates so many distractions where you can't fully be present and tune in.
Yeah, I just have a question. I don't know. Is it like the attention span? You know how everyone's saying your attention span is getting short. Is that real, or is it just like it's
Yeah,
boring?
I mean, social media, like, yeah, the internet, social media, everything. So, like, I know y'all like love staying on your phones and social medias, but like take breaks.
Yeah.
Stay present, like engage with like your friends, your family, your teach like because that's honestly what matters. And honestly, at the end of the day, are you gonna remember what you're scrolling the internet for? Probably not. You'll probably
Yeah.
forget in like an
Yeah.
hour, you know?
yeah. The worst part is like how addicting it is.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah,
Especially
so
about
I
like
don't know if you guys know this. I know like the UK and Australia actually made a law where anyone that's like 16 or younger can't use social media. And I'm going to be honest, like I think we need to do that like with the US because I,
yeah.
I remember when I got my first cell phone, I was 12 and it was literally just for my mom to like pick me up from playing tennis and just doing sports.
Mm.
But it like, and I had T9. You probably don't even know what that is, but it's like we didn't even have like social media or anything back then, you know? So it was very, very different. But yeah, it definitely is addictive, especially when you're young. Think of like little kid, like
Yeah,
when you're
exactly.
in like elementary school, it's like you should still be a kid. Like you shouldn't be glued to your phone.
Yeah.
Like play outside, like, like engage with your friends, play sports. I don't know.
I think
yeah.
she has a story of like babysitting, but these kids are just so addicted now. It's kind of
And I feel
scary.
like honestly, because there's like so much science about this, it's really dropping people's creativity and critical thinking too.
Really? How does that work?
Well, I mean, you're not using your brain in certain contexts. I mean, you're just like constantly relying on looking up information on your phone or like just dealing with like different social situations and social interactions.
So is there like ability to socialize going down too?
Yeah, I always like it's because I feel like, there's a lot of like clickbait stuff that's out there and everything I keep seeing that's popping up. It's like the intelligence level of like Gen Z is like the first generation where it's like declined from the generation prior. And so I'm a millennial. And so they're like the younger generation below me. And I'm just like, I see it though, because have had the internet their whole lives and social media. Like I remember when I was like in fourth grade and we got dial-up internet in our house, and that was like such a huge deal. But I mean, I didn't get Facebook came out like when I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like I was the last generation that kind of grew up before the world of social media and like used it when I was older.
Mm.
And then I feel like everybody else now, it's just that's what you do since you're little. So it's really just weird to see how things are kind of playing out.
Yeah. From a neuroscience perspective, like, are there any study hacks, study techniques and habits that we do that aren't really just feel productive, but aren't really that productive?
That's not productive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's so funny because I was talking about this in a podcast today. So, yeah, I feel like the most common study habit that a lot of people think that feel productive that isn't is cramming, like waiting last minute, rereading, just highlighting everything in multitasking. Like they feel efficient, but the problem is they're not building this long-term memory.
Yeah.
And the problem also is your brain doesn't really learn from familiarity. It learns from you putting in effort. So if you're not actively like recalling and testing yourself, maybe you just space things out over time. to see if you're retaining information. So basically, the idea is if it feels really easy to you, it's probably not working.
What would you, I don't know, like I've heard a lot about blurting, that kind of study hack. What's a specific one that you would recommend to students?
To like help you learn. Yeah, I feel like honestly, it's just boring. And, I feel like, most people like to say hacks, and I don't really like the word hack because I feel like there's not really like a cheat for any of these kind of things, right? But I feel like with learning, just your brain learns best by just spacing things out over time, like actively testing yourself and just really trying to recall the information instead of just rereading it. So really this effort of pulling it out of your brain is really what's strengthening your memory. And then again, the basics, which are boring, they're so important, like getting a good night's sleep, just managing your stress, and then minimizing distractions. Like if you're studying, like do not have your phone on you. Put it in a different room if you know you're going to be tempted to use it. But all of this really directly affects just how your brain stores and retrieves information.
It's so crazy how something so small like sleep can affect
Mhm.
everything in your life. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, I'll always stay up until 2 a.m. studying, and then the next day I'll
You're
be tired,
exhausted and groggy, I'm sure.
a
Yeah.
headaches all the time, and like the simple solution is just sleep, and you wouldn't think of that
Yeah.
first, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of like a newer area of research, just seeing how much it's kind of like playing into like your role with aging. But yeah, like my advice was studying, and it's like I get it. I was like an athlete in high school too, so you really had to work on your time management, especially when you had tests. But I've always believed in like studying and spacing it out over a few days. Like if I know I had like a really hard, stressful test in a week, I would probably prepare like 4 days beforehand and like instead of just cramming, doing it in 6 hours, just break it up in like a few hour segments.
Is there like, is there any recent neuroscience discovery that you felt like is really interesting and you'd like to point out?
Yeah, so I was actually reading about this the other day, which is pretty cool. And I think I might do a post on this because I don't really think most people know about this. So really, there's this kind of like death switch that's in Alzheimer's disease. And so basically, there's where this like specific toxic protein interaction actually drives your neuron loss in the brain. And so, what's interesting is researchers have studied this in animal models, specifically mice. And basically, what they have been able to do is just block this interaction and really slow down the disease progression. And so, this is like a game changer where it's like a shift of just treating the symptoms of this disease. Also, at the same time, there's work on reprogramming brain cells that act like garbage collectors to clear plaques, which is kind of what I was like talking about earlier. And so this is like really, really cool from a research perspective. It's like still really early on and it's more mechanism level science, but this can really change how we treat neurodegenerative disease. But there's not a cure yet, but finally, like it looks like we're starting to target the problem.
That's great.
Wow.
I didn't know
How
that.
are they gonna apply that from mice to humans?
So that's how research usually works. So, like, usually you start either in cells or a smaller animal model, like mice or rats, to really understand the mechanism of how something works. And then usually once that's successful, you use bigger, animal cohorts, whether it's mice, whatever animal you're studying. And then if that's successful, that's when you get into clinical trials. I don't know if you've heard of that, but there's basically four different phases. So the first one is where you'll have like a small group of people, usually like 30 to 50 people, just to make sure, it's effective and your treatment works. And then moving on each phase, you kind of like branch out and do a bigger patient population just to make sure there's like no side effects, it's not toxic, things like that. So that's basically how, all of our medications really get approved. And
Yeah.
it's a long process. Normally, like it used to take like 10 years, 10 to 20 years, depending on like funding. But that's kind of like how it goes. Usually you start in cells and you move in animals and then people.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to learn about because I want to be a psychiatrist. I know people who want, I know our friend Emma wants to be a neurologist. So for the people who want to study this type of thing, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I feel like I say this to students all the time. Obviously, stay curious. And really, most importantly to me is learning to think critically. There's so much information that's out there, especially that's online. And as you know, like not all of it is accurate. So I think it's really important being able to ask, like, is this actually supported by the evidence? And so, you don't have to know everything. You just really need to know how to think. And the way to do this is just get real life and real world exposure. So shadow someone, like join a lab in the summertime, network, which is so important. Just talk to people of like who you're interested in their career path. And then I feel like from that, that's where things really start to click. You know, you have your curiosity, and that's really what gets you in the door. But stay curious and then just critically thinking. I feel like that's such a game changer because you don't really learn this in school. I feel like this was like drilled in my head during my PhD. But it really helps.
We finished the questions, but if you have any like stories you would like to tell us that you think are pretty interesting, feel free to, please.
Yeah, like what do you guys want to hear?
Um,
So you want to go into psych and Lily, what do you want to do?
I'm undecided, but I was also thinking about psychology.
Okay. What year are both of y'all?
2009.
We're,
We're graduating 2000 next year. So,
yeah.
Okay, so you're juniors.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like my advice to you guys, if like you're interested in psychiatry, like are there like any doctors that you guys know that you could like shadow or just like get exposure to?
Not really, but
Uh,
I
Is
guess
there like you have to live near, do you live near like a big like medical center?
yeah,
Where are you guys based out of?
New Jersey, Bergen County.
Okay. I mean, I would just like, y'all probably still, do you guys still go to a pediatrician?
Hmm.
I was
yeah.
like, that would honestly be someone to ask if like they know a psychiatrist or if your parents do. Because I would just tell them like, hey, this is something I'm like really interested in. I would like to get some exposure because you might think you have your heart set on something and then maybe you don't like it. Because I feel like that was me growing up. I always was kind of debating between like, do I want to be a physician or do I want to be a scientist? And so during college, I like just put myself out there. I like shadowed a bunch of different doctors. Like I like joined different labs just to see, what really makes the most sense for you. And like, it's not easy. You have to be curious. There's going to be times where you're definitely going to get burnt out and you're going to want to give up. But then at the same time, if it were easy, everybody would do it, right? But there's such a need and like just if you're curious and passionate, just go for it because we need like so many more women in STEM fields.
Yeah, that's another question I was asking. Did you know, like in your junior high school, that this is what you would do? Because I feel like I'm still so like,
You don't have to have it figured out.
Same.
I mean, like I f- I feel like I knew in high school I was like, okay, I'm going to do something in science just
Mhm.
because I was really good at math and science and I was curious about how the human body worked. So I felt like from that I just went and majored in bio because that's pretty good for anything if you know you want to do like any kind of science. Like if you wanted to do like grad school, med school, any type of like clinical professional school. I feel like that was a pretty safe major. But then also you're getting exposure to a lot of different like sciences that you didn't get in high school. Um, but no, I mean, my I feel like this is what everybody will tell you, and they'll be honest, especially more so for scientists, because I feel like it's a little bit different. Like what you have your mindset on, you like I never thought in a million years I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And I feel like I completely changed careers like a year ago.
Mm.
It just kind of worked out and I just knew I didn't want to be in research anymore because I was just burnt out. I wanted to make more money. I loved the science, but I was like, I'm tired of doing the same experiment all day and like over and
Yeah.
over again. I'm tired of going to the lab at 4 a.m. I'm tired of like going on weekends and I don't know. It's just you have to go by like your personality and what makes the most sense for you. I felt like, especially like during my PhD, I noticed I had more of like an entrepreneurial mindset. And I just kind of learned like working with different people that I really sought my independence and I really wanted a job where I could be independent and kind of like creating my own hours. So I don't know. There's so many fields out there, but just I would say like try to like network and just ask. I think like if you're interested in psych, like ask if your pediatrician has someone they can recommend, or even if you can just like shadow your pediatrician. Like that's still experience, right? And it's clinical.
Yeah, I have I have this fear. I think everyone who wants to get into like medical or science has this fear that you won't stick with it. You would go through, get to
That's
medical
okay.
school or like even like farther than that, and you just think, oh, it's not for me suddenly.
I don't think that. I've honestly rarely seen that with people. It's like sure, a lot of people kind of like fizzle out on the path to get there, but like once you get there, you're committed. You're not gonna drop out. And honestly, college is way different than grad school and med school. I feel like college you're still trying to like prove yourself, compete with other people for grades, like scores just to get into med school or PhD or whatever it is. Once you've made it this point, like the cool part is everybody knows you're smart, right? Like you don't have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
The cool thing is, it's like embrace it and enjoy the journey of learning because at that point, I feel like your professors really want to help you succeed, which is really nice. Um, but yeah, like if you have the curiosity and the drive, like you're not going to give up and like be your best advocate. I think it is getting better, but like, medicine and being a scientist, it's still a male-dominated career. So you're gonna deal with things that are not pleasant. You're probably gonna deal with sexism. You're probably gonna deal with ageism. Once you start your first job, that's just part of it. But don't let it break you. Just kind of think of it as like, hey, this is a learning experience. This is gonna make me stronger in like the long run.
Mhm. That's really reassuring to hear, actually.
Yeah. I was
Because
gonna say I love like girls nowadays I think have been more passionate about getting into the medical field because for the longest time we've been so just like shut out of
yeah,
that realm, but now I think more than ever girls are pushing themselves to be in the medical field and pushing themselves to be in bigger positions like you. So I think it's really cool that you're in such a large field and you're succeeding. So
it's cool, but like it's crazy because I didn't, this like if I had to like give my like self advice from when I was a kid, like when I was little, this I always dreamt of doing something big in science where I'm helping people, right? And I feel like my dream has come true because, I do. I get to educate the public. I get to mentor students and like meet people like you guys just to give them advice. And the path, like I was saying, it's not easy. I mean, there was so many days I would come home like crying, and that's okay. Like it's gonna happen to you guys, but just don't give up. Like you're gonna deal with a lot of obstacles, but like don't let it break you because once you get on the other side, it is so freaking worth it. Yeah,
Um,
just my biggest advice, be your biggest advocate. Like no one knows yourself more than you. Like you're your biggest supporter.
okay, if we want to wrap up, we have one more question to ask you that we have to ask everyone that comes on.
Sure.
What is your favorite movie?
The Godfather. That is
Oh, I've heard of
my
it.
favorite. I love mob movies, and that is my favorite movie of all time. And I'm making my husband watch this with me for the millionth time in a couple of days because we're going to Italy this summer. So I'm like, we have to watch this.
I heard they were long. I heard they were.
So good. The first one's the best. The third one's kind of crappy. But it's just if you like mob movies and Al Pacino, he was like a baby in this. He's like the best actor. It's just really goes into like the family dynamics. And even though it was made in the 70s, I feel like it's still so timeless and like the story's awesome.
I just watched Goodfellas.
That's another good one.
Good one, yeah.
Yeah. What are y'all's favorites?
Mine is To All the Boys I Loved Before.
I haven't
So
seen that. That was based on a book, right?
yeah, it's just a little rom-com
Yeah.
that I like.
Cute.
I like more horror. My favorite movie is Black Swan.
Ooh, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
thanks. Yeah.
I'm gonna do the outro and I think we can wrap up. Okay. Thank you for listening to Student Minds. Don't forget to keep spreading joy and take care of yourself and others. We'll see you next time. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.